Welcome to the Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. And today's guest is Steve Hoffman, also known as Captain Hoff. Hello, Captain Hoff.
Wonderful to be here.
Yes, so glad you are on this podcast because we are going to talk about entrepreneurs and systems in order for entrepreneurs to grow their business. Because Steve, should I call you Steve or Captain Hoff? Which one do you prefer?
You can call me Captain Hoff. That's my nickname in Silicon Valley. All
right. So Captain Hoff is the founder and CEO of Founders Space, which is a global accelerator for entrepreneurs. And you're also an entrepreneur yourself, different ventures, and you can also tell us about it. But your passion is helping entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, right?
Exactly. So I've been an entrepreneur. I did 3 venture-funded startups in Silicon Valley and 2 bootstrap startups. So I know what it's like. I've been in the trenches. And then I launched Founders Space, which is a global startup incubator and accelerator. So we work with hundreds of entrepreneurs all around the world.
Great. Now, Captain Hoff, you have a great and very interesting background. You have a background in computer science, right?
I do.
And you also have a background in film and games and the whole entertainment industry, right?
Yes. My entire life has been at the crossroads of entertainment and technology. That's where I began. So my first startup was a game company, which I launched. I bootstrapped it, became very successful. Then I did a bunch of venture-funded startups in interactive television, in social media, and in games. And then I launched Founders Space, which is much broader. We work with startups across all sectors. So it doesn't matter if you're doing a SaaS, B2B company, biotech, space technology. We're working with companies in all those different fields.
Great. And you're also a best-selling author. So tell us about the books that you wrote.
Sure. So my first book, published by Hachette, is Make Elephants Fly. And it's all about how entrepreneurs innovate. So the elephant is your big idea. How do you make it fly? How do you get it off the ground? What is the process and the system for innovating? So we lay all that out. My next book, Surviving a Startup, published by HarperCollins, is all about everything entrepreneurs need to know to survive. So we can go into that today. And then I have a new book that just came out called The 5 Forces That Change Everything. And that is about how technology is changing every industry on the planet and where we're headed.
Wow. Fascinating. So let's pick one because, obviously we can talk here for 5 hours. I'm really interested to know about the innovation system and the process for innovating. And we can do another podcast on that. But let's really go over the survival as an entrepreneur, right? Like what are the processes and systems that entrepreneurs have to have in place in order to survive? And I would assume also thrive, right? Not just survive, but have abundance and go above survival.
Yeah. So the first thing to build a great startup, you need a great team. And I see so many entrepreneurs drop the ball right at the beginning of the game. They literally, they do not systematize how they find their co-founders and early employees. Instead, they're like, oh, I know Joe, I know Sally. I'll just bring them onto my team because I know them and they're available and they want to do this. Now, it doesn't mean Joe and Sally are the best people for the job. They're the right people to actually build a huge global business. They just happen to be available. That is a mistake. So when you are starting your company, you have to recognize that the idea probably doesn't matter because it's going to change. Like the idea is just the starting point. The capital, you're not going to be getting a lot of money unless you're already rich and already famous. You're not going to be getting a lot of money. So what matters is the team. Can you pull together amazing people where you can actually figure out how to innovate and build a great product? Well, if you just go out and pick random people, it's not going to work. So what I tell entrepreneurs to do from the beginning is systematize. Literally write down what would be your ideal team. What qualifications would each person on that team have? What role would they fill in the company? And then you map it out as if you knew those people, like you know them. Then you can go through your own, internal Rolodex in your mind and flip through, like, what are the people I know? Do any of them perfectly match these qualifications? If they don't, then you have to go beyond your immediate circle and start looking for the right people, and you can't compromise. I tell entrepreneurs, spend 80% of your time at the beginning finding the right people. Only once you find the right people, then you start, conceptualizing your product, engaging customers, building out the product, going to raise capital, all that other stuff.
Interesting. So at what point, you have the give and take between the finances, the capital, and the ability to and have enough people, right? Because you have to pay them. So how do you balance that problem at the beginning where maybe money is a little bit short, but you do want to get the best people?
Well, see, this is the thing. You cannot, unless you already have a big bank account or already have angel investors lined up, which most entrepreneurs don't, honestly, when they begin, you can't pay them in money. So you're going to have to pay them in equity. You're going to have to compensate them with shares of the company. That means that they have to believe in your company. So when you are looking for the right people, the qualifications you need when you lay out that roadmap and that description, the profile of the people you want, is that they are passionate about solving the same problems you are. So that it is not your company, you're hiring them. That comes later when you have money. They are joining you as a partner in your business. They are taking a stake. They are taking a risk. They have to be fully motivated. One of the qualifications that I have, and I have a whole list of them, is that the people have to be committed. If they're not 100% committed like you, meaning they are willing to go for a year without pay to make this big, and you have to reward them correspondingly. Like if they're going to jump in at the beginning and spend a year of their life trying to build this, they want to be sure that they own a substantial chunk. So all this has to be mapped out at the beginning. What shares, will each of these co-founders get? What is fair? What are they actually giving up? Are they willing? They can't be interested, doesn't matter. The fact that they say, oh, that's amazing, but I want to keep my job at Google. Like, I don't want to join your company because I'm earning great money at Google. But I'll do it part-time. If they tell you that, they're probably worthless, because literally what happens is they dabble in your business. And then when it doesn't take off, when you hit a road bump or they get busy at Google, they're gone. Like they don't care. They haven't risked anything. So they're not really in. So what you want people who are all in with you. And that's when they're all in, how do you get them all in? Well, most people in life don't make their decisions based strictly on money. They make their decisions based on a combination of economics and what they're passionate about, what they want to do with their life, where they see who they see themselves as and what they want to become. So you have to tap into that. You have to show them that what you're offering them is their dream. Like it's not just your dream that they're helping make come true, but it's their dream they're helping make come true. Right. So and that together you can make that happen.
Absolutely. Okay, good. So let's say we have the team that's part of the system. The first thing is, you create your team. So with that model, by the way, it's probably like, how many people are we talking about? Because not all of them are going to be partners, right? So what do you suggest? Like how many people are we looking for?
At the beginning, you're not going to be able to hire a lot of people. So you're going to want, a few partners. Now, most startups, they start with 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, but usually not more than 5 people. So if you can get a couple other really committed, good people with talents to execute. Now, this is the key. If it's your first startup, the other thing you need to lay out in criteria, systematize is, what do you need to make this company a success? Like how, you can't count on outside capital usually, unless, like I said, you already have sources. So how can we make this company successful with just our sweat equity? So what do we need? So number one, if you're trying to build a big rocket ship like Elon Musk is, or Jeff Bezos, there's a reason that billionaires started those companies. There's a reason that Elon Musk started SpaceX, Jeff Bezos started Blue Origin, Richard Branson, another very rich guy, Virgin, because they had hugely deep pockets. So don't do a huge company that requires a massive amount of capital. Instead, say, look, my criteria is we need a company that we can launch on very little capital, and we can actually get it to the point where we are showing traction, which means growth, like either user growth or revenue growth. We can do that with our own sweat equity within a year, because you need to give yourself at least a year. And we have the resources. Everybody I'm bringing onto the team, one of the criteria is they can go a year, and we can make this happen. If you can do that, that's the right business for you. A lot of times these days, that's software, because software, it's incredibly cheap, right? It just requires brain power. So who do I need? I need a great technical co-founder, one who's really technical. I need another person who's a designer who can really design a user experience. And I need one person on the team, usually the CEO, who is kind of the visionary, the salesperson, the leader that brings it all together.
Absolutely. All right. So we're talking about surviving a startup. So the first thing is you have your team, or, a limited, basically the core team that you need. So you're not doing it by yourself, but you also have the talent that you need. Because if you have your bright idea is, let's say, as you said, a software, but you are not a software engineer and you don't know how to program, you better find somebody. And that's where you team up. So we have the team. What is the next step in terms of having the right system to survive a startup?
So the next system you need, and once you've systematized getting the right team in place, is what do we build? Now, so many entrepreneurs think that when the light bulb goes, they need that brilliant idea to start. Like they need that idea that's going to change the world, or they don't even go there. Well, that's a mistake. Most of the best startups in the world actually began with one idea that wasn't that great. And then along the way, they figured out what works. And if you don't believe me, let me give you a few examples. We all know Google, right? When Google started out, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the founders, thought it would be a nonprofit. Like it's one of the most profitable companies in the history of humankind. Like, how could they think that? Well, they were originally focused on helping academics find research projects online. So that's what their algorithm did. It was only later that they figured out, we could apply this search algorithm, this internet search algorithm, to actually a broader spectrum, the entire internet, anybody searching for anything. And that's when they became the Google we know. YouTube, another company, they started out as the video dating site, and it failed. Like it was not working. It was only in the process they discovered that, people don't want a video date. But what they do want is to upload their videos and share them with other people. When they figured that out, they changed their direction. You can go on and on. Twitter was a podcasting company originally before it became Twitter. They pivoted. So I tell entrepreneurs, the first thing you need to do, don't pick a specific idea. Have a lot of ideas, but pick a specific area you want to innovate in. Like, I want to make the fishing industry more sustainable. So who do I need? Who is passionate about saving our oceans, saving our fish, eliminating bycatch, all these things? Who can work with me? Then you bring in those people. And then the next step, go to the customer. Because you may have all these ideas you think that could make the fishing industry more sustainable. But when you talk to fishermen out there, the people who own the boats in the industry, they don't care. They don't care about your ideas. They have their own priorities. And if you are going to actually make a difference in making that industry better, you're going to have to take into account what they want and combine it. And that's where the true process of innovation occurs. That's where those light bulb moments actually start to happen. And by not picking a specific idea, you aren't going in there trying to sell them on what you already thought of, and convince them that your idea is right. You're listening to them. You're engaging them in a dialogue. And you're saying, let's figure out together how we can make this a win, how we can make your industry, you can say, of course, you're the fishing industry. Why would you want to overfish? Why would you want to do bycatch? That doesn't help you. That only hurts future potential. Now, how can we solve those problems and make you more profitable, more efficient, all the other things you need to grow your business? That's when you get onto something.
Perfect. So what I'm hearing is, you have an idea, you have an area that you are passionate about, that you want to help, that you figure out that this is an area that I want to go into. Then you figure out the team members that are going to do it with you, the core people. And then you take the overall, you have like a broad area that you want to work in, or broad idea that you want to help, how you want to help. And then basically go and survey the people that you're going to, or the customers or the businesses that you're going to service, or that you want to go into that area, and find out what do they need? What is missing? How can you help? It's like, how can you contribute something valuable that they will actually use?
Yes. And what you want to do when you go into the industry is you want to be very carefully looking at all different segments of their industry, all the different processes they have. And you want to identify the processes they have that cause them the most pain. Like what in their industry have they put up with for years because they don't think they can change it? Like it's the way things have always been done.
So give me an example of that.
So in every industry, there are things that we can go back in history. Like first, all these businesses had everything on paper, right? We all had filing cabinets filled with paper. We were moving paper, and it was a pain. But people didn't think of it as a pain because they just accepted that this is what you had to, everything had to be on paper. It was slow. It was cumbersome. Things got lost. It was impossible to like go in with a computer and track, anything. It was all manually done. And it was expensive in terms of people's time, but that's the way things were done. However, certain entrepreneurs go into different business sectors and say, look, we can automate this. We can systematize this. We can put this on, we can digitize all the processes you're doing now and make you so much more efficient and add all this other value that you don't even see right now. So they did that. And then they started solving these problems for businesses, a lot of times that the businesses didn't even know was a problem. But once they saw that there was a better path, then they saw the potential. And that's when, we've seen that process happen over and over again in every single industry on the planet. So any area in that business that is a pain point, that is really cumbersome, and you suddenly, new technology can make this so much more efficient. Anything where you can take humans out of the equation. Humans are expensive. They're usually the biggest cost a business has. So can you replace things that people do with an automated system? If you can do that, you can save the business money, you can make them more efficient. There's a huge opportunity.
Right. Like an example will be Calendly, right? Like creating the calendar.
Oh yeah, Calendly, right? I use it all the time because before it sucked up a lot of my time, or I'd have to have an assistant do it. And when the whole system can be simply automated, I'll use it. Email, everything we do today is based on that premise.
Right. But it requires also adaptation, right? Because it's, like Calendly can be looked at, like when you send somebody a Calendly link, there might be that misconception or conception of basically that it can be cold or not. Basically, it takes the human element out. But on the other hand, it's like more and more people are using it. So you're kind of used to it, and you get used to how convenient it is, as opposed to going back and forth on emails and even looking at your calendar. It's like, I can just log into, if you send me a link, I use the link, and it actually gives me like a green dot on all the hours that I'm available compared to my calendar. And boom, I have it scheduled, right? So I know that it's convenient. So I don't take it anymore as, not that I ever did, but I heard like saying, well, it's not personal enough. It's not that. So you have to adapt to it too.
Yeah. And people do adapt. So over time, there's always that period of adoption where there'll be resistance, where there'll be people like, I like to do it the old way. Like the old way had its advantages and they don't want to change. But if the utility of the innovation outweighs the other advantages of doing it the old way, it will ultimately win out. So it's just a matter of time.
Great. So we got to that step where we realize what is needed, and then we figure out what is the solution that we can provide that people will actually see valuable and will be willing to invest in or use. And we also, we might pivot in the future. I mean, we think this is now a good idea, but we might change it to something else. Depends on what happens. What's the next step in the process?
So the next step, once you figure out what your potential customers really need, then you have to dive in and get something up and running quickly and cheaply. And I tell people, what you don't want to do is imagine the entire product and every feature and start laying it out and building that, because that's going to be a huge, costly mistake. Because what we found is that the best products are products that aren't conceptualized in full at the beginning, but they are started out very small, solving one thing, and then you iterate on them and you go through this process of actually making it better and better and better by getting customer feedback along the way, every step of the way. So when you're building out a new product for a customer to solve one of their problems, don't try to imagine solving everything, all the problems they have. Just pick one very specific point. The more specific, the more well-defined, the better, and try to solve that one little thing for them in the best way possible, and then get them using it. And as they use it, you'll start to see all sorts of other opportunities to make it better. That works really well. And this process of engaging the customer and building your products with the customer, with them. Now, they don't know all the technologies. They don't know what's possible. All they can do is usually tell you what outcome they want. Like, I want to become, I want our fishing boats to become more efficient. I want to have less bycatch. I want to have more, better targeting of what we do. They will tell you the outcomes they want. And then you will have to go back with your team, your technologists and your user experience designer, and figure out, how can we give that to them? What are the latest technologies like AI, blockchain out there that we can use to actually solve these problems in a way that they've never been able to do before? Then you go through that process.
Interesting. Okay, good. Once you've done that, what's the next one?
So the next step is you get that product into their hands, they start using it. You start to measure the impact it has on their business, the engagement. Do your customers drop off? Do they stick with you? Are they willing to pay? How much are they willing to pay? You start to figure out all these things that you didn't know at the beginning, right? You didn't know any of this, but it's a process. Innovating is a process of discovery. Doing a startup is a process of discovery. So you're discovering. First thing you had to discover was, where's the demand, like this pent up demand, all these customers in this area that really need this. Second thing is, how can we implement on that and give them what they need? And are we really meeting their need?
Right.
Once you get this data, that is the thing investors love. So everybody, like a lot of startups, they are like, the goal is to raise money. No, the goal isn't to raise money. The goal is to figure this stuff out. After you figure this stuff out, raising money becomes really easy.
Absolutely.
Before you figure any of this out, raising money is really, really hard. And there's so many entrepreneurs out there who think, I'm just going to come up with a great idea and raise a lot of money. Like that, they read about it. It does happen. But more often than not, money that goes into products that haven't actually figured all this stuff out at the beginning, they fail. That money ends up being lost. The companies that wind up succeeding are the ones who do all the hard work before they raise the money. Now, venture capital, just so that you know, venture capital is not good at helping you innovate. It really doesn't, right? You may need a little angel funding at the beginning to help pay for some of the expenses to do this process. But venture capital is really good at accelerating a business. That's where venture capital comes into play. It's once you've figured out what that customer really needs and you've figured out how to build it to them and get it to them, then venture capital allows you to go out and literally acquire a massive amount of customers and scale up your business. So you figure this out, and then you put in place the process for raising venture capital.
Right. No, it makes total sense. It just takes you in sequence from an idea to actually validating that idea, to actually being able to use it and really interact with your potential customers or clients to make sure that they actually need it and it actually works. Once you have a proof of what you're doing and it looks like there is future, then you can go and raise the money, because then it makes sense for the investor to actually invest because they can see the future with you. And then you can massively market and promote and sell, etc. That's a great process. It is definitely, it makes it very simple how to survive, and it also can deter people that just have an idea and think that they're going to make billions of dollars off of that idea, to really think again and really take those steps so they can actually make their dream come true. But it's a very, very good process. So what would you say to entrepreneurs that are at one of those stages, but they feel like they can't, they don't know if they should continue or just quit? What's your advice to when they are in that situation?
So I get asked by a lot of entrepreneurs, should I quit? Should I quit and do something else? In almost every single time they ask me that, I tell them, yes, you should quit. Now, that's not because I'm a sadist, like I want to beat down entrepreneurs. But honestly, no entrepreneur wants to quit. Like if you're an entrepreneur, you're usually overly optimistic. You really want to do it. The ones who come to me and actually ask me or ask themselves, should I quit? It means they already know it's not working. Like something isn't working. And I will tell you, this is really important part of the process of being an entrepreneur. You don't hold on to your ideas when they aren't working. Like most entrepreneurs fail because they stick with the same idea too long that isn't working rather than switching sooner. Really smart entrepreneurs that I've seen, they'll go into the marketplace and they'll try something and they think it's brilliant. We all do when we get these ideas, but it doesn't work. So they go, okay, it's not working. Why? They figure it out. And if it's not a problem they can solve, then they abandon it and they try something else. Then they try something else. And then they keep trying until they hit it. So when you're an entrepreneur out there and you start to think, nothing's happening. I don't see, the customer doesn't seem to care about the product, what we're building. We don't have any ideas that are really unique here. Everybody else is doing the same thing. If you hit those points, basically you're at a dead end. Like you don't have anything. It doesn't matter how long you've worked. It doesn't matter how much money you put into it. What you have to recognize is this isn't working. And right. It's better to recognize that, right away within a month or two, rather than spend 6 months or a year banging your head only to then recognize nothing's moving. So I tell entrepreneurs, do that test. And quitting doesn't mean giving up. Quitting means quitting what you're doing now, stepping back and looking for other ideas. And where do those ideas come from? I'll tell you, 99 out of 100 times, those ideas will come from your customer. It means going back to your customers, the ones you've engaged with, the ones you want to help, and saying, this doesn't seem like a big enough problem. You're not excited about this. It's not making, what are other areas? And go deep with them. Try to figure out in their business, what's causing them problems, and then try to solve those problems, because those might be bigger, higher value problems. Remember, it's not how much you care about your vision, right? How much you're in love with your product. It doesn't matter. It matters how much they care. And if they don't care, then you don't have a business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great advice. So now let's talk about your accelerator incubator it's a global incubator accelerator for entrepreneurs. So who comes to you to that incubator or accelerator? Who is the typical client of yours?
So we get lots of early stage entrepreneurs who have a team. They've already picked out a team. We look at that very closely. They have a product usually in development or recently launched. They don't have a lot of money. So they usually have raised some angel funding, but not a lot of money. And they need to get to the next level. They need to go out to venture capital. So a lot of what we do at Founder Space is actually prep them. And we have a whole system for that. Like, how do you raise money? How do you put together a pitch deck? How do you speak to investors in a way that the investors will respond to? Because a lot of entrepreneurs end up going completely backwards, like into fundraising. Like they figured out a lot of the hard stuff with their business already, where the demand is, all these other things. But then when they start to engage investors, they just don't know how to do it. And it's really interesting, because you can have a great company, you can have really figured things out, but if you don't present it in the right way, a lot of investors, because they're very busy, they'll just look right over you, right? They'll just ignore you. So you need to know what's in their head. Like, what do they need to see in order to make a decision and say yes.
Interesting. Okay, good. So you definitely help, you basically get, you take them along that journey of getting at the end to actually raise the funds that they need in order to actually grow. Yes. And become bigger. That's fantastic.
And I can give you some tips. I can give you some fundraising
tips.
So when you fundraise, you also have to be systematized. So I tell entrepreneurs that are going out to raise capital, anybody who's a business person raising capital, first of all, don't just talk to one investor at a time. That is a huge mistake, because at the end of the day, what you want in order to close a deal is competition. You're never going to be, you need leverage. So every investor you talk to needs to know that you are talking to other investors, and that you also then need to put them on a timeline. You need to tell investors, you can't let them set the agenda. You can't let them say, okay, I'll get back to you next month, we'll talk some more. As soon as that starts happening, nothing happens. It drags on forever. You end up having these meetings that real investors that really want to invest, they can make a decision very quickly in a matter of days or weeks. You don't have to wait months to get their decision. So I tell entrepreneurs, the first thing you need to do when you sit down with an investor is, when you sit down with them the first time and you're presenting your project, ask them to invest, and set a timeline saying, look, I'm talking to a lot of different people, because that's what you should be doing. When you go out to raise money, you need to do it in concentrated burst, like a burst of time where you're just talking to at least 10 investors at once. So and not all of them will invest, but as soon as one drops off, you add another one. So you always have 10 in play. So you can always turn to these investors and say, look, I'm talking to a lot of other people. I need to know whether you're in or out of this deal. And I have the rule with investors. It's called the Prince Charming rule. So the Prince Charming rule is that every investor is a frog, and you are going to go and kiss those frogs with the hope that they turn into your Prince Charming and carry you away and make your dreams come true. But I tell you, if you've kissed the same frog 3 times and they haven't turned into Prince Charming, they're just a frog. So by kissing them, I mean, you've met with them like 3 times. Like the first meeting, usually they won't invest. But after the first meeting, you should ask them, what do you need? What information can I get you so that you can make a decision to invest? And then you set up a follow-up meeting, let's talk next week. And then you come back next week and you've given them all the information that they've told you they need. And then you also tell them, bring anybody else to that meeting who you need to make a decision, to do due diligence, whatever it is. Boom, the second meeting, you ask them again after going through any more questions that they have. If they don't do it, say, okay, we'll meet one more time. And please, make sure you get me everything you need to make that decision, because I'm really busy. I have a lot, we're building our product. We have our customers. We have other investors. I need to know so that we can move forward with you or not. And then at the third meeting, if they don't commit, I will tell you, they probably will never commit. Usually, you can get them going, unless it's a big corporation that has a huge process and they're very slow. But if it's individual investors or even a venture firm, if they know that other people are interested, and you got to let them know also, you can't come back later. A lot of investors will say, let me know when you get some other investors interested, and then I'll come. Then I'll join you. I'll follow them. You don't need followers. You say, no, if they're interested, they're going to want the entire deal, and they're going to want to bring in their friends. So unless you want to introduce me to other investors who you think will lead the round, then I don't need you to follow. I either need you to lead or introduce me to a leader. That's the way you're getting in the deal.
For sure. That makes total sense. Great tips. Absolutely. So, another question, unrelated, but how did you get the name Captain Hoff?
So remember, I was in games. So Captain Hoff was my gamer handle. So I was Captain Hoff, and then I became Captain of Founder Space, leader of the team, and it just stuck.
Amazing. Well, Captain Hoff, you shared so much knowledge here, and I so appreciate it. I'm sure our listeners learned a lot, and they should definitely check out your books, which are, again, so tell me the names. So you have Surviving a Startup, which is your latest one.
Yes.
And then you have the Make Elephants Fly.
That's right.
And then your latest one is going to come out. So that is the five
forces that change everything. And that's all about technology, AI, gene editing technology, space technology, blockchain, everything, all these technologies and how they're impacting business.
Excellent. And so you're so knowledgeable, and the books are definitely the next level that our listeners should listen or read, because that will really give them the ability to understand this more. And if they want to contact you, what's the best way to contact you?
So I'm super easy to find. Just go to founderspace.com, founderspace.com, and you can reach out to me. You can contact me from the page. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Search for Founderspace, Captain Hoff. You can find me.
I think you're the only Captain Hoff on LinkedIn.
Probably.
Yes.
I hope so.
Excellent. And before we end this podcast, I definitely want to give a big shout out to Jeremy Wise from Rise 25, who introduced us. We all know that Jeremy is absolutely awesome, and Rise 25 is the company that is actually producing my podcast. Love working with them. And, he is great at connecting and introducing. So I really appreciate him introducing us, because this has been definitely a wealth of information and great data that people can apply and use. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.